Sarah, it's mid-June 1944, just a few weeks after the D-Day landings, and there's a problem, a huge problem.
But I thought the landings were a success. They breached the Atlantic Wall.
They did. The landings were a historic victory, but now the most powerful army ever assembled is completely and totally stalled.
Stalled? By what? More German fortifications?
No, by something far older and far deadlier. The Allies had pushed inland, but now they were trapped in a green maze, a landscape that was bleeding them dry, yard by bloody yard.
What was it?
The Germans called it the Bocage. To the Americans, it was simply known as the hedgerow country, and it was threatening to turn the entire invasion into a catastrophic failure.
When I hear hedgerow, I picture a simple shrub or a fence. That can't be what stopped an entire army.
That's what Allied intelligence thought, and it was a terrible miscalculation. These were not garden hedges, Sarah. They were ancient fortifications.
How so?
For 1,000 years, Norman farmers had cleared their fields of stones, piling them up to mark property lines. Over centuries, these stone piles grew.
So they were like stone walls.
They were earthen banks, 3 to 12 feet high and up to 10 feet thick at the base. The soil was packed as hard as concrete, and on top of these banks, trees and thorny bushes had grown for generations, their roots intertwining deep inside.
Creating a kind of natural living rebar.
Exactly. These roots formed a dense internal web that made the hedgerows stronger than most man-made fortifications. And the American sector, an area of just 8 square miles, contained nearly 4,000 of these.
4,000. So every single field was its own fortress.
A fortress that was a defender's paradise. For the Germans, every hedgerow was a ready-made defensive position.
How did they use them?
A German machine gun team could dig a small firing position into the earthen bank, invisible from more than a few yards away. The vegetation on top gave them perfect concealment from the air.
And the thick earth protected them from artillery.
It made them immune to almost anything except a direct hit. A single German squad, just 8 or 9 men, could hold off an entire American company of 200.
And the Americans had to attack across the open fields.
Yes, they were completely exposed. The Germans would hold their fire until the Americans were in the middle of the field, then open up with machine guns from the front and the flanks. Every field was a pre-targeted killing zone.
What about the American tanks? Weren't the Sherman tanks supposed to be the key to a fast, mobile breakout?
They were. Allied strategy was built on armored thrusts, but in the Bocage, the Sherman tank was completely, totally neutralized.
They couldn't just punch through these dirt walls.
They couldn't. The earthen banks were too thick, too solid, too reinforced by those ancient root systems. Firing a 75mm shell at one just blew a hole in the bushes on top, but the earthen base remained intact.
So the tanks were stuck on the narrow, sunken roads.
Which were, of course, the perfect places for a German ambush. The tankers became desperate. They had to find a way to get off the roads and breach these obstacles.
They had to try to go over them.
They tried, using brute force. They would back the tank up, get a running start, and accelerate directly at the hedgerow, trying to use the tank's weight to climb over.
This sounds like a terrible idea.
It was suicidal.
Why was it so dangerous? What happened when the tank tried to climb the hedgerow?
The front of the Sherman would ride up the earthen bank, tilting the entire tank backward at a steep 30 or 40-degree angle.
And that exposed its underside.
Exactly. The belly of a Sherman tank had only 1 inch of steel armor. It was designed to stop mine fragments, not an anti-tank rocket.
And the Germans were waiting for this.
A German soldier, armed with a Panzerfaust, would position himself in the next field and just wait. He didn't even have to see the tank.
He could hear it.
He would hear the engine roaring, he'd see the front of the tank rise above the vegetation, and the moment that 1-inch belly plate was exposed, he would fire. One rocket was all it took.
One battalion commander lost 4 tanks in a single morning. He called the tanks death traps.
He said, "We are losing crews to an enemy we never see, never engage, never have a chance to fight." It was a tactical nightmare.
They must have tried other things. What about combat engineers? Just blow a hole in the hedgerow with explosives?
They did, and technically it worked. A big TNT charge could blast a gap large enough for a tank, but the tactic had fatal flaws.
What was the problem?
First, it was incredibly slow. Engineers had to crawl up under fire, place the charges, and retreat. Second, the massive explosion was like a giant dinner bell, announcing to every German for miles, "We are attacking right here."
And the Germans would train all their machine guns and mortars on that single gap,
turning it into a funnel of death. The bulldozer tanks, which seemed like the obvious solution, were even worse. They were slow, highly visible, and the Germans prioritized them, knocking them out almost immediately.
So the advance just stopped.
It slowed to a nightmarish crawl. The U.S. Army was suffering casualties at a rate that rivaled World War I. They were losing thousands of men to advance just a few yards. The entire invasion was teetering on the edge of failure.
Into this absolute crisis steps who? A general? An engineer from MIT? No, a 29-year-old sergeant from New Jersey named Curtis G. Culin.
A sergeant. He was a canker from the 102nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron. He had no advanced degrees. He was just a guy with practical American ingenuity who had grown up fixing things during the Great Depression.
How did he come up with the idea?
It happened during an informal gripe session. Soldiers were just gathered around, venting their frustrations. And according to the story, a soldier from Tennessee, a hillbilly named Roberts, said something like, "Why don't we get some saw teeth and put them on the front of the tank and cut through?"
Saw teeth? It sounds ridiculous.
Most of the men laughed, but Curtis Culin didn't. He heard beneath the crude phrasing a mechanically sound principle.
Don't go over the hedgerow, go through it.
Exactly. Don't climb, cut. Use the tank's own power to drive steel blades through the base of the hedgerow, severing the roots like a plow.
So Culin had the concept, but where in the middle of a war zone do you get high-quality steel strong enough to cut through a 1,000-year-old wall?
The answer was literally lying on the beaches they had just captured.
What do you mean?
The German beach obstacles. Before D-Day, the Germans had installed thousands of Czech hedgehogs. These were giant, 6-pointed anti-tank obstacles, made from 6-foot-long, high-quality steel I-beams welded together.
They had failed to stop the invasion, and now they were just scrap metal on the beach.
Thousands of tons of the perfect raw material. Culin got permission from his commander, grabbed a welding torch and a work party, and drove to a salvage yard on Omaha Beach.
What did he build?
He welded 4 of these steel beams, cut and beveled to create tusks, onto a horizontal crossbar. Then he welded the entire assembly to the lower front armor plate of a Sherman tank, angling the prongs slightly downward.
It sounds incredibly simple.
It was crude, but functional, and on July 11, 1944, in front of a small group of skeptical soldiers, they tested it.
What happened at that first test?
The Sherman backed up, accelerated to about 10 miles an hour, and hit the hedgerow.
And?
There was this deep, ripping sound. The prongs bit into the earthen bank at ground level, The tank shuddered, the driver gave it full throttle, and it drove straight through.
It didn't climb?
It never tilted. It burst through to the other side in less than 5 seconds, its belly armor completely safe. The soldiers who were watching just erupted. Some were crying with relief. The impossible problem had just been solved by a sergeant with some scrap metal.
How did this get to high command?
Word spread like wildfire. Within 3 days, General Omar Bradley, the commander of the 1st U.S. Army, was there to see a demonstration for himself.
This was the demonstration on July 14th.
Yes, Bradley watched a light tank and then a Sherman crash through a massive hedgerow in seconds. He was stunned. He turned to his ordnance chief and gave the order.
What was the order?
He said, "I want these devices manufactured and fitted to as many tanks as possible, round-the-clock production, top priority." He needed them ready for a massive new offensive. That offensive, Operation Cobra, was launching in 11 days.
11 days. How could they possibly mass-produce hundreds of these things in the field in 11 days?
It was one of the most incredible manufacturing efforts of the war. Every ordnance unit, every welder, every maintenance depot in the American sector was put on this job 24 hours a day.
They were just hauling scrap steel from the beaches and welding?
Exactly. It was a frantic, desperate race against time. By July 24th, the day before Operation Cobra launched, they had done it.
How many?
Approximately 500 devices were installed, nearly 60% of the entire American armored force that would lead the attack. The soldiers started calling them Rhino tanks.
And on July 25th, Operation Cobra began.
First came a massive apocalyptic carpet bombing that shattered the German front line. Then the armored divisions, led by these new Rhino tanks, advanced.
And they were no longer stuck on the roads.
For the first time, they had true mobility. They crashed through hedgerow after hedgerow, choosing their own routes, bypassing German strongpoints, exploiting gaps. The German defensive system, which had relied on the hedgerows, was rendered obsolete in a single day.
The stalemate was broken.
It was shattered. The American advance accelerated from yards per hour to miles per day. In just 1 week, the German 7th Army was in full retreat. The breakout was complete, and the road to Paris was open. All thanks to a sergeant's simple, brilliant welding trick.